I'm David Thaler. Welcome to Stage 2 of Collective Bargaining Mediation, the Mediator's opening statement. The Mediator's opening statement is critical in collective bargaining. It has at least three primary functions. 1, to assure parties of the mediator's neutrality and integrity. 2, to familiarize parties with the process so they're not surprised in later stages. And 3, to set a tone that conveys openness to candid and respectful discussions. In a good mediator opening statement, the mediator will explain their role. Do they make decisions? Do they propose solutions? Are they responsible for recording the parties' offers and counteroffers? The answers to these questions vary according to the law of the jurisdiction or the rules of the program in which the mediation takes place. The second element of a good mediator opening statement is to review how the day and subsequent days are likely to play out. This can involve an explanation of the order of the mediation proceeding, as well as logistical considerations such as room assignments, meals, breaks, and ending times, if there is an ending time. The next element of a good mediator opening statement is to clarify their neutrality as to both substance and process. Fourth, the mediator should assure parties of confidentiality and any exceptions to confidentiality in their jurisdiction. The mediator should preview some techniques that might be employed later in the process. For example, the separate caucus, which is where the mediator meets with only one side at a time, or the sidebar, which is where the mediator meets with only the committee heads and not the rest of the committee. Subsequent videos in this series will show demonstrations of these techniques. The mediator should emphasize the self-determination of the parties. At the end of the day, it is they and not the mediator who make the decisions in negotiations. Finally, the mediator should cover what happens legally at the end of the process. Namely, if the parties arrive at an agreement, what is the legal effect of that agreement? And depending on your jurisdiction, how parties might make it legally effective. The mediator should also explain that if the parties don't arrive at an agreement, what the next step would be. This last question can be a delicate matter in jurisdictions where a strike or a lockout are the only alternatives to agreement, in which case the parties will be well aware of the consequences of not agreeing. At this time, let's check back with mediator Martin Callahan as he delivers his opening statement.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today and spending time with me this morning, where we got to know each other a little bit. For those of you who have not participated in mediation before, I wanted to go over a few things with you. First of all, I'm not an arbitrator and I'm not a judge. I don't make decisions, I don't make rulings. You, the people at this table, will control the outcome of this mediation. Whether you reach an agreement or you don't reach an agreement, that is entirely up to you. What is contained in that agreement, if you reach one, again, will be up to you. And although I don't write language, I can assist the parties in forming a mutual agreeable agreement. During the mediation, we will meet in joint session as we are now. We will also meet in private caucus. I want to assure you that everything that is said during the mediation, especially in private caucus, is 100% confidential. I do not share that with the other side. Now, you may hear me ask you a question. If I hear something, I say, that's fairly relevant. Do you mind if I share that with the other side? You will, of course, have the opportunity to make that decision whether I share it with the other side or not. And I will, of course, honor that decision. During the private caucus, I will also use that opportunity to make suggestions, offer some thoughts and ideas, and maybe suggest to you that you should withdraw one of your proposals or maybe accept one of management's proposals. Okay, that may lead to some very challenging discussions that you should be aware of, okay? I also want you to know that you will see me taking notes. These notes are for my own use, and they will be destroyed at the end of the mediation. They should in no way be considered a record or minutes of the mediation. Anything that you give me during the mediation, I will also destroy unless I give that back to you. That having been said, during this process, I also may ask your lead negotiator to either speak with me privately or with the other lead negotiator. This is what we refer to as a sidebar. During this sidebar, it's an opportunity for me, the mediator, to ask some clarifying questions, maybe make some suggestions. I want to be absolutely clear to you that this is not an attempt by me or your lead negotiators to circumvent the committees, and I would just ask that you allow me that process. Does anybody have any questions?
So, Mr. Mediator, how long is this going to take? This already feels like a waste of time, and I have cats to feed.
Figures you'd be worried about that. You'll have plenty of time when we strike you.
Well, let me just put it to you all this way. I have no time constraints today. I am willing to stay with you for as long as it takes to make an agreement. Does anybody have any time constraints we should be aware of? Okay, hearing none, let's move on.
In my opening statement, I let parties know that we will have difficult conversations and there may be times where we disagree. But if I'm not disagreeing, I'm not doing my job as a mediator. That came in handy the other day when I was working with a group. The issue was the parties went beyond expiration. And typically when that happens, the parties agree that they will pay any wage increases retroactive back to the original expiration. Well, that commitment was made, but once the union put a proposal on the table that management didn't like, management decided that they would walk away from that retroactive payment and thought about walking away from negotiations altogether. I knew how bad this would resonate in the other room. So I decided to have a conversation with management. And in that conversation, I said, hey, do you remember when I said there will be times where we disagree? Well, here's one of those times. If you walk away from that retroactive payment, that will be perceived as disrespectful, insulting, and punitive because you will be walking away from a commitment that you made. We had a conversation and we went back and forth about it, but eventually they understood the perspective of the other side and decided that it was best to pay that retro payment, and the parties reached total agreement. That's why in your opening statement, it's very important to set those expectations. So parties know that during those conversations that you will have to say some things that they may not like. But doing that helps them understand the other side and moves them along to help them get to a total agreement.